This is about AI-powered customer experience. And we're going to be talking about building your AI-powered strategy for customer experience transformation in 2025. And joining us to the stage is David Belevsky, Senior Account Executive, AI Digital Orchestration at Genesys. Welcome.
Perfect. All right, there we go. So I thought I'd start this conversation today with a little bit of a perspective on what the state of customer experience has been over the last couple of years, call it the 5 years, and this particular report is what I've chosen to demonstrate. It's gone back in time to ascertain what the customer experiences have looked like from all different industries across the globe. We've looked at multiple sectors, including public, as you can see on the right-hand side. And beyond that, what we can sort of start to identify in the trends over the last couple of years is that there's no one really running away with the CX excellence title. In fact, there's only 11% difference between the top and the bottom sectors. The next thing to understand is all industries have been hit or challenged by the same market forces and business challenges. You can see kind of the way every industry has struggled and improved through the COVID years. But the last thing to understand is the opportunity to grow and advance is significant in our industry. In our area, in our sector, there's low-hanging fruits that we can take advantage of when it comes to customer experiences and the journeys that we're curating. If we fast forward from 2022 to 2023, the McKinsey report that released last year at the end of 23 actually spoke about some opportunities. They talked about how the public sector has actually grown significantly and improved over the COVID years in the post 12 months following it. But there is still a significant burden on the citizen experience as they try to curate new journeys. And beyond that, it was the self-service and digital channels that citizens are talking about wanting most in terms of how they would improve or to characterize improvements in the customer experience that the government agencies are able to provide. But what about Canadians? What are we looking for? What if you ask the person on your right, or if you look at the studies? Personalization is the key, right? If we're talking to somebody or a brand or a government agency who knows us, who knows what we've already been trying to do online or trying to do self-serve, before we reach that person, and then that person as you get to a human agent-assisted experience, they understand what we've struggled with or what we've tried to accomplish. That's meaningful, right? That can make a big difference in the experience that the customer or the citizen is going to have. But then it comes down to the communication style and the preferences, and that's what this slide is intended to represent. It's the most recent census we had, and it represents the generations in the workforce. It's not equal, it's not far apart, but we're not equal in terms of the representation. And when we look at that contrasted by the styles of communication for each of these generations, now we're going to be looking at things that you can start to identify. Voice isn't going away, right? Every generation is looking at voice still as a primary channel of communication with the agencies and with all these sectors, of course. But if you start to look at the other generations, we're now looking at the millennials, and we're looking at the Generation Zs. Generation Zs. And what we're going to see is very strong movement towards the digital channels, right? And as we focus on Generation Z, now we're looking at not just the traditional digital channels. We're looking at messaging apps like WhatsApp. We're looking at social platforms that are getting much more traction. So to encompass a strategy when it comes to your AI applications in the customer experience space for government agencies, we start to have to come together with a full circle of what's the dynamics or what are the key pillars that we need to focus on. It needs to focus on multiple things, and we're going to talk about that right now. But where to start can be a challenge. There's a myriad of different AI applications in the marketplace. And after a certain period of time, isn't it true that they all start to sound the same a little bit? Kind of everyone's promising lowered costs, higher productivity from an agent perspective. We're talking about, making better decisions with a co-pilot. But then if we lower it down to now we're maybe making a single, or maybe we brought it down to one or two vendors of choice, we can be restricted further internally if we don't have an AI governance committee set up. a committee that's designed and specifically looking at the oversight, how it's going to be deployed in your own environment, in your own agency. What are the risks associated? We just heard about brand identity recognition and the importance of that at the government level. And now we're looking at how we're going to deploy this in your internal organization to help your journeys, but you have to make sure it's deployed in a safe way. So Genesys and what any AI strategy really needs to focus on a couple of very key or important pillars. For this is obviously very Genesys focused, but no matter who your vendor is going to be, you want to make sure you capture these particular areas of interest. An AI-powered CX transformation strategy should include and must include, first of all, employee experiences, something to help and augment your agents and your supervisors to do their job better, become more productive. But it also has to include your citizen experiences. We talked about the channels, opening up more channels where your citizens, where all of us are living, on the digital channels where we use them most. We're also talking about offering these on a self-service platform, virtual agents, online services to make it better, and having those self-service capabilities inform from one step of the journey to the next until it gets to a human agent, having all of those steps inform the next step so that you can actually have that ability to have a consistent experience that's personalized. But the next thing to consider is the data layer. If you're going to have these separate sort of pillars, EX and citizen experience, CX, come together, you have to have the platform by which you're able to connect all of these data points. So having something that exists at a foundational layer as a holistic or native solution can significantly help your outcomes, your business outcomes, because the journeys are now connected natively inside the tech stack. But not only that, you have to make sure that that tech stack is developing securely, ethically, and considering all the appropriate privacy compliances that would be required with any sort of AI data set that they're being used. So what we do at Genesys is with Genesys Cloud, we make sure that we're actually part of multiple global groups and associations to talk about and discuss and explore emerging technologies. We are constantly evaluating what's coming out, what new AI innovations are available, new large language models and extra large language models, foundational models, to try and assess what is available for the purpose of customer experiences so we can tap into the latest and greatest and provide it for the use cases we're driving or delivering. But not only that, we're investing in AI. We have about 1,000 developers, 350 or so of which are specifically dedicated to AI applications and services. And what we're doing is we're making sure that this investment is keeping your data secure. So when we create our AI applications, we're not just taking public open source AI and large language models and creating ability to have an output that would put your brand at risk, that would put your agency at risk, your identity. But when we do this, we curate those large language models, and those data sets become ours because we're training them with about 35,000 is actually the latest number I've heard internally, 35,000 different models that we can use to train our data. Beyond that, we strip the data of anything that could be discriminatory. Things like PII, personally identifiable information, race, sex, gender, religion, anything that can produce a bias output is stripped. And when we've done that, we've now created our own version of this data set, which we store locally in Canada in the environment where Genesys Cloud, which is the tech stack for CX we're talking about. Now it's in your data, it's in the data set. That data set resides in the cloud where your services reside as well. So quick access, low latency, and a reduction or containment of the cost that would be associated to maintain it. So when we're thinking about this, the idea of an AI-powered or CX transformation strategy, having all these things, will keep it on guardrails so that your agencies have the ability to put this into production quickly, nimbly, in the same user interface that you're already comfortable with if you're using it as an agent or a supervisor. And not only that, that's important. Why? Because there's no longer the days, they're gone when we're putting a new platform into production that could take years. With AI, we have to do that in weeks to months. We have to see that delivery and return on investment. In fact, the thing I like to say most often is that it's not about how getting a complete, solid application or start with your first AI endeavor. It's about failing fast and failing often. You want to iterate. You want to continue to iterate. Put it out there as a minimal viable product, and then make sure you see what the trends are with your citizens and how they're adopting it and your employees, and then moving that into a next iteration so you can improve on how it's being used and adopted. Because if you wait to get everything right before you deploy, well, how long is it going to take before another experience that your citizen is having is now comparing you, and you've just deployed this, and it's no longer even as good as current that they've had elsewhere. We call it an experience economy because we're no longer selling services, we're no longer providing services just in our own vertical or space. We're competing with the next experience, the next best experience that our citizens are having, and that could be at the restaurant. That could be at the store. It could be on the insurance side. But wherever it is, it could be at another agency. And if they come into our environment, and now we've deployed something, even with AI, but it's not hitting on the latest things because we're waiting to deploy, we're putting our CX transformation at a disservice. And you talked about security. At Genesys, we have all the latest compliances. We strive to maintain these with everything developed, and AI being built into our Genesys cloud stack adheres to and strives to maintain these compliances. So everything that related to cloud data, cybersecurity, ethics involved is part of the services, or rather the compliances and attestations and certifications that we maintain. Another part of your strategy should be to factor in your pace of innovation and the leadership. So with Genesys Cloud, we've been honored and recognized as an industry leader for our AI capabilities and innovations year after year by multiple analysts, Gartner included specifically, and we've also been recognized in other areas as well from a customer's perspective and adoption. So customers, in fact, that are using Genesys Cloud AI capabilities, when you turn it on, the first AI solution, it's actually 361% over the last 3 years have turned on 3 or more. So when you turn it on once, it's kind of like we talked about earlier, failing fast, failing early, failing fast, and moving on and iterating. You're turning on one engine, you're going to see the value of that quickly, exponentially increase when you turn on multiple engines afterwards. So starting with perhaps a virtual agent, moving on to a journey-shaping agent on your website. We'll talk about that in a minute. How are we adopting AI in the public space in Canada? Well, with Genesys, we are doing quite well. We're at over 25 different orgs that are organizations or public entities that are on Genesys Cloud. We've experienced significant growth in the last year or so. And on the right-hand side, we're starting to experiment with different AI technologies, specifically with virtual agents and self-service. So think of a voice bot or a chat bot, to understand and provide some level of self-service without having to get to an agent. We're also talking about agent co-pilots, the things that your agents are doing most frequently, things like remembering the conversation, having to type up the summary, drilling down to find, maybe scrolling down over dozens potentially of wrap-up codes or disposition codes to find the right one. How many agencies see their agents trending to just the top 3? The first selection of wrap-up code is always the one that's most often selected because maybe they're not always scrolling down to the one that's more appropriate. So these things are mundane things that agents would otherwise be tasked with. It takes cognitive load, but with a virtual agent, that type of thing can go away, automating those simple tasks to make it easier to remember and summarize a conversation. There's more benefits, we'll talk about that in a minute, around knowledge as well, providing knowledge in real time in response to the conversation, so that the citizen is saying something and that knowledge article related to that expression or related to that conversation is automatically and surfaced in real time. But not just that, having the ability for the agent to understand where in this 4 or 14-page article, this knowledge article that just surfaced, where exactly is the answer. It'll be highlighted for the agent. And that agent can now read exactly what the answer is or the policy is. And specifically, I'd be very specific, very accurate, and very consistent. So that increases your first contact resolution now. Increases your employee satisfaction rates, which reduces your attrition rates and increases your efficiencies overall. And these represent, on this slide, how we're extending beyond the contact center. So we talked about a strategy that needs to have your employee experiences and your citizen experiences combined. But as you start to roll out these additional capabilities into your journeys, now you're starting to look at maybe you need a little bit more governance. You've got great predictive routing strategies to enhance your skills-based routing logic. You've got predictive engagement, which is essentially an online journey shaping solution to help your citizens navigate your website and maybe guide them to a better version of self-service. Maybe they didn't know that knowledge article existed, they didn't do the right search term. You can anticipate that, predict it. And then you can also use this journey shaping to either deflect or elevate a self-service online interaction to a contact center interaction, because with information that informs the next step, inviting them to a chat experience and maybe a chat bot. And from that chat bot, having that full history of the context from that online experience that they did some self-service on, plus the engagement, the interaction with the bot, all of that can be surfaced now to the agent. With all of that great information in context, relevant to this journey, which now becomes what? That great word again, we all want it. We want personalization. Well, that agent will now understand what this journey was all about before they reach the phone. It's not just a matter of popping the ticket that's open or creating a new ticket. It's about understanding what they've already done so far before the ticket was created. The co-pilots is the next area, that employee experience. What we're looking at here is the ability to really deep dive and help your agents to do their job better. We gave a couple examples with auto-summarization and wrap-up code automation, etc., knowledge articles. But agents aren't the only role and persona in your contact centers, right? You've also got the supervisors. How do you help your supervisors do their job better? Quality administrators, quality administrators and other managers who need to understand the transcripts and start to perform evaluations. How did that customer conversation go? How was it managed by your agent as you go through the transcript? Most brands, most agencies are looking at quality evaluations anywhere from 1 to 10 a month. You know, that's challenging because even how do you choose with a 1 or 10 interactions in order to perform an evaluation? If you had some automation involved, you'd be able to have some AI that identifies based on the conversations that are trending, maybe some specific topics that are being spoken of, and suddenly you're able to identify those much more salient or important conversations to evaluate, and that turns into another step of having automated scoring potentially. That allows the AI to score in a consistent way with your quality assurance agents and resources. And now you've got a machine that can do up to 100%, and you're taking maybe evaluations that would be a lesser score, maybe 70 and below, and you're escalating them with flags to a human to be able to evaluate specifically. So automation in different areas is critical to your strategy. But as you deploy these, we talked about business insights. Part of what many organizations are facing today includes a challenge with business insights and data availability at the right time. So what do I mean by that? If you have a citizen crossing platforms, like we talked about, online into the contact center, maybe there's a mobile app in some agencies that they can access, their profiles. If they cross one platform to another, how does that data transfer? And what if they're crossing channels, going from a digital channel to a voice or voice to a digital? How do you navigate that part of the journey and provide insights at the right time? And then once you've deployed a voice bot, it's not just about the performance of the voice bot, but how are your citizens going through those journeys using the voice bot to enhance the experiences overall? How are they connecting? Where are the disconnects? You know, where are the friction points? What needs to improve on your bot? So all of these different areas of technology can come together when you have a foundational layer that connects all of the AI that you're building out in a connected fashion. So journey management is what I'm talking about here, where you can start to eliminate the silos. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Social engagement. Let's talk about this from the lens of the customer now. How do they all come together? So I'm a customer. Maybe I'm not this customer. This customer is Julie, let's call her. She just moved to Ontario. She's trying to figure out, what the services are like in her area. She's going online, just, sharing some information, exploring. And from there, she goes to a government website, and she's trying to understand maybe is there a profile she can create or what services are available. She needs to update her driver's license or OHIP number, et cetera, or I guess apply for one potentially. And so she's now encountered some friction online. This journey shaping, so we've already started listening potentially to what she's doing, what she's asking for, not from a social marketing perspective. We're CX, right? So we're trying to listen for operational issues, things that might end up coming into the contact center and causing that higher cost voice call. So we're trying to deflect that, improve the experiences, understand what you've done already, what you're talking about. Online, we've talked about shaping that journey a little bit. So we identify the friction. How is Tina, was it? Julie. Thank you. Julie, what does she already do to try and self-serve? And then the virtual agent now takes all that rich context and starts to provide personalized options, not just a standard IVR, but the ability to actually get into it based on what she's asked already or what available information there is to direct and guide. Now that virtual agent may be not able to support her fully self-service, so it needs to escalate. But you can see here, we're using all of the latest AI technology, conversational AI, predictive AI, and generative AI. If with the generative AI here is a summary, if there was self-service, that bot would wrap it up with a wrap-up code. It would give an automatic summarization of that interaction. But when it goes to agent-assisted now, we're looking at using those same AI technologies, those underpinnings, to provide the agent with all of that rich context as well. So you're not losing it when interactions and journeys cross platforms or cross channels. That rich context can come into the agent experience on their user desktop and start to provide additional data that makes that interaction, again, more personalized. But it's not just what has happened, it's also what do we need to do? How do we inform the agent, guide the agent, give them something to be able to do their job and provide even a more empathetic and a more efficient experience over the phone or over this channel that they've chosen to connect? Well, that's where agent pilots come through. We've got guidance through our co-pilots, not just on the knowledge articles, but let's provide them with guidance on what to collect. If there's a policy and there's 7 pieces of data that need to be collected to complete this ticket or make this request complete, you can identify those, create a flow or a next best action is what we call it, that gives the agent the ability that this is what we need to do to complete this task, and then have the system, the AI, actually capture that information. As the conversation completes and we're starting to ask the questions, it'll populate. So you get rid of that whole fat finger problem when you're typing the wrong information and you don't even realize it. Now it doesn't make sense, there's a delay. So the AI can automatically populate these forms, and the agent is always in the loop because they can edit any auto-summarization or any form that's been captured automatically by the AI. But you're helping them to do their jobs better. And in the end, we augment that with the automatic summarizations, and we can do that by department, by agency, by queue. Each co-pilot can have its own version of a summarization. It's not just a blurb, it's not just a paragraph, separating the specific components or elements that each department has so that you have a summary that has a format specific. You always want to get the OHIP number. You always want to get the address, neighborhood. You always want to get whatever specific information is required from an analytics post-interaction perspective. You want to capture all of that. Any promises that were made or anything like that can be formatted so that summary is specific to that co-pilot in that department. And then we talked about the business analytics and the insights. So typically, we understand that your contact center is not the only platform in your environment. Your CX ecosystem includes many, many different platforms. And we're not talking about an overhaul of all these platforms. That's not what it is. But when customers navigate from one to another, it often results in that disconnect, right? These are siloed applications historically. They've grown up that way. Any integration between the two is generally maintained and is static. So it's not integrated natively necessarily. And when that happens, there's challenges, there's frictions in those journeys, right? There's blind spots. But when you can shatter those silos, when you can create visualizations that allow your business leaders to see as they transfer from one platform to another, they can see how this journey, we talked about the contacts that can connect. This is the visibility that Genesys is moving towards right now. It's already been in the marketplace. We've acquired that company. We've put it into the product in terms of the multi-channel, multiple channels that you can deflect and escalate interactions from and to. And by the end of the year, we're going to have the ability to ingest data from third-party platforms as well, providing even greater insights to where the frictions are. Do you have a spike in contact center interactions today? Maybe it was a change to the website. You can prove that now in minutes and have a business case to say, hey, there's something happening here in the contact center. I think this change started here because that's where the interactions are coming in from. The spike is there. Or made a change to the bot or a knowledge article online. You can start to pinpoint customer behaviors and the areas of those spikes from one business problem or one journey to another when you have something like journey management and analytics. So with the last 5 minutes, I want to leave some room for conversation together and questions. As a review, we're looking at an AI strategy. Complete AI strategy needs to include both citizen experiences and employee experiences. It's best when those experiences can be connected under a single stack, something that's native, and they should also include some level of visualization or business insights so that you can understand as you deploy these new technologies, how are they performing in the overall, how do you visualize the performance overall? They should also they should also be developed ethically, securely, and maintain your your citizen privacy. We talked about how some of the questions to ask about modeling, training, where does the data reside, making sure you have an AI governance committee in place so you can assess the risk, and you can interview and assess send your questionnaires to the vendors so we can make sure we're showing you exactly, being transparent, what AI models we're using. Are we using open source? Are we using private proprietary AI engines and models? How do we train it? Where is the human in the loop? And then making sure that we have providing you and you're getting rapid innovation, maintaining access to the emerging technologies so you don't have to develop on LLMs that you think are current and then suddenly yesterday's deployment is last year's conversation. You're talking about what you're going to buy for a long time before you buy it, never mind before you deploy it. By that time, what's changed in the environment, in the industry, right? We have to make sure that you're working with a vendor who's staying current for you. And trusted leader, adoption, pace of innovation. These are such important things to the pillars of your AI strategy. And ultimately, return on investment. What is the time to value in your environment? So when you really think about it, an AI strategy to power your CX transformations that includes all of these key elements will have the effect of 1 + 1 = 3. You're going to be able to take advantage of turning one on, turning another one on quickly soon thereafter. And suddenly you're starting to get incremental improvements across the board. If average handle time is a KPI that is very important to you for your business case, you can hit that from multiple AI solutions. You can drive and optimize that. If first contact resolution is important to you, we can hit that from multiple AI solutions as well. So the question is, the planted question, does anyone want to ask it before we go to the planted one? Which one's most important to you? We was kind of asked earlier, I think Chris from Tribe asked a question similar is what I'm looking for. How do you prioritize which AI engine, right? Which one am I going to start with first? How do I find out which one's most profitable or which one has the greatest ROI? Which is the least difficult to deploy with the lightest lift? Well, that's another question to ask your vendors. Genesys absolutely has a response. And to answer that, high level, it's going to be things like, what is your business case? What do you need to prove in order to spend $1? And now let's work together with the volume metrics in your contact center, your call volumes, your handle times, your after-call work, your cost of an agent, annualized with all of their licenses and salary together. How does it all come together into a formula that we can predict now based on the performance that we've seen our customers benefit from? Put it into a formula that says this is what it looks like in your environment. We can promise you, it's not promises, it's benefit statements, it's projections. But now it's based on personalized contact center metrics that you own, that you are comfortable with. And we can provide you with this kind of insight to identify the dollars on the table for each of these solutions. And now you have an easy way to prioritize. Well, heck, Agent Copilot for 500 agents can save me $1 million a year. Virtual agents can save me $1.7 million a year. Now you have a conversation. Which one's more difficult to deploy? And what are all the KPIs that are underneath that 1 or 1.7 million? And now we can start to connect the value on the table with the business case that you've already started with, your models, reinforcing your models in your business cases. All right, I'm going to end here if there's no questions. Sorry, I stole the one. Give me 45 seconds. Okay, I'm going to give you something inspirational here. Follow me for a minute. Yeah, okay. Long time ago, when I was a boy, no. There was an industry shaping, right? We had horses, we had buggies, we had millwrights, we had, horse caregivers, horse whisperers. We had a whole industry that opened up when this contraption was devised. But when that changed to the automobile, things were scary, right? It wasn't easy to move on, but new industries were created and new jobs. There's a driver now. There's rubber required. There's metal work. So it's tough, but change is in our purview. It's in our generation. It's in our control right now. So being afraid of AI is kind of like being afraid of an automobile. We have so much potential. Think you can't go to a movie and watch it with a horse the same way you can if you got two people in a car, driving. That whole industry was created after the automobile. And so where we're at now is we are accelerating the future with AI, especially with AI and CX. We're going to go to driverless cars. We're going to go to automated contact centers. We're just at the cusp of this. And the idea, my invitation to everybody here today is come to the booth. Let's talk a little bit about your AI strategy, and let's talk about the future, not just 2025, but where do you want to be as an entity, as an agency in the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you very much. Thank you.